Fire. Humanity's oldest technology, our first shield against the dark. For 1.4 million years, since Homo erectus first knelt beside a glowing ember, the hearth has been our heart. It cooked our food, shaped our evolution, and carried us through brutal ice ages. You would think that after 1 million years, we would have mastered this force. But here is the unsettling truth. Most of us have forgotten how to burn. If you have a wood stove in your home and you use it the way most modern people do, you are committing a thermodynamic mistake that wastes up to 40% of your firewood. Imagine felling 10 trees and throwing 4 straight into a rot pile. Or worse, turning them into toxic smoke rather than usable heat. We load our stoves to the brim, choke the air down, and walk away believing we've made the fire last. But this familiar ritual, banking the fire, is not efficient. It is not ancient wisdom passed down through time. It is a modern misunderstanding. Today, on Historia Prime, we are reclaiming the knowledge our ancestors once mastered. We will reveal the physics behind the thermal battery. We will expose how the energy crisis of the 1970s shattered our understanding of combustion. And we will show how a simple shift in technique can transform your wood stove from a smoke-belching box into a 90% efficient survival engine. This is not just about staying warm. This is about learning to work with fire, cleanly, powerfully, and intelligently. Stop burning wood like a novice. It's time to master the flame. Chapter 1. The Smoldering Trap. Let's step into a familiar winter night. The wind claws at the windows, frost grows on the glass, and you want your home to stay warm until morning. So you do what feels logical. You open the stove door, stack in heavy logs until they nearly touch the baffle, and then, almost instinctively, you close the air dampers down tight. The fire slows to a gentle, sleepy glow, orange and comforting, promising to last for hours while you sleep. But that glow is a lie, because this slow burn, this tradition we call smoldering, is the enemy of efficiency. When you choke the fire's oxygen, you don't create longevity, you create incomplete combustion. Instead of releasing heat, the wood releases smoke, thick with unburned hydrocarbons, tars, and wasted energy. And smoke is not a harmless byproduct. Smoke is fuel you failed to ignite. Engineers at Brookhaven National Laboratory and the Forest Products Laboratory ran a comparison that exposes the truth. In the first method, they used the classic banking technique, a full firebox and restricted airflow for a 10-hour smolder. It consumed 32 pounds of wood and delivered an average of just 18,000 BTUs per hour. In the second method, they did the opposite. They burned a smaller load with full oxygen, letting the fire roar hot and fast. It consumed only 18 pounds of wood, nearly half, and produced 28,000 BTUs per hour. Less wood, more heat, a complete inversion of what most people expect. The math is merciless. The smouldering fire wastes nearly double the fuel while delivering far less warmth. And the physics explains why. Smouldering happens between 500 and 800 degrees Fahrenheit, temperatures too low for clean combustion. Instead of burning the wood, you are baking it, distilling it into tar, particulates, and carbon monoxide. And all that unburned vapor rises into the chimney, searching for a cold surface. When it meets the flue walls, it condenses into a dark, sticky, highly flammable substance. Creosote. The more you smolder, the more you paint your chimney with this fuel-rich residue. It narrows your draft, strangles efficiency further, and becomes the single greatest cause of chimney fires. So the attempt to save wood by burning it slowly is an illusion. In reality, you are throwing away 50 to 60% of your fuel's potential energy as smoke, while quietly building a bomb inside your chimney. The fire never asked to burn slowly. We forced it into weakness. and paid the price in wasted wood, colder homes, and dangerous creosote. And now that we see the trap clearly, it's time to learn how to escape it. Chapter 2. The Physics of the Flame. To escape the smoldering trap, we have to shift our mindset. We can't think like consumers who simply use fire. We must think like physicists who understand it. Because inside that firebox, combustion is not one event. It unfolds in 3 distinct stages, each with its own demands, its own dangers, and its own opportunities for efficiency. The first stage is dehydration. Wood, even perfectly seasoned wood, is still a sponge carrying 15 to 20% water deep inside its fibers. When a fresh log hits the fire, it cannot burn, not yet. Every bit of heat in that stove is diverted into boiling the water locked inside the cells. At 212 degrees Fahrenheit, the log steams, cools the firebox, and steals the heat required for real ignition. This is why wet wood collapses a fire. You're not burning fuel, you're running a tea kettle. Then comes stage 2, pyrolysis. Once the wood dries enough and climbs to around 500 degrees Fahrenheit, the solid structure begins to break apart. It releases volatile gases, hydrocarbons, tar vapors, even methane. And this is the secret few people know. These gases hold as much as 60% of the wood's total energy. This is the true treasure chest of BT us. But if your fire is smoldering at 600 or 800 degrees, those gases never ignite. They slip away unburned, drifting up the flue as smoke. In that moment, more than half of your heat floats into the sky as pollution. Stage 3 is the one we all recognize: charcoal oxidation. The glowing red coals, the steady heat, the familiar comfort. But charcoal only contains about 40% of the wood's energy. If this is all you burn, you're living on the scraps, while the real feast passes you by. So the question becomes, how do we unlock that missing 60%? How do we catch the energy inside the smoke? The answer is temperature. Those volatile gases ignite cleanly only at around 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit. When the firebox reaches this threshold, something extraordinary happens. The smoke itself catches fire. The heavy hydrocarbons break apart into pure heat, water vapor, and carbon dioxide. Flames lift off the logs, swirling freely in the upper chamber like living shadows. Ghost flames, rolling fire, a visual signature of what scientists call secondary combustion. This is the moment when your wood stove stops being a smoke factory and becomes an engine. This is when every BTU is captured instead of wasted. This is when pollution drops and efficiency rises. But none of this is possible when we bank the fire and starve it of oxygen. Without air, you lose heat. Without heat, you lose the ignition threshold. Without the threshold, you lose more than half your fuel. To master fire, we must let it burn the way it was designed, hot, clean, and complete. Only then do we reclaim the full power hidden inside every log. Chapter 3. The Lost History of Heating. If the science is so clear, then why, generation after generation, do we burn so poorly? Why is the all-night damper-down method still the default in so many homes? To understand this, we have to step back into history. Before the age of central heating, burning wood wasn't a casual task. It was a survival skill. Families taught it the same way they taught hunting, baking, or sharpening a blade. You learn to read the fire like a living creature, to feed it in small, deliberate amounts, to manage the coals so the flame stayed clean and bright. Fire was a partnership, not an appliance. But then fossil fuels arrived. Oil furnaces, natural gas, the thermostat. With these came convenience, and with convenience came amnesia. The knowledge chain that stretched back thousands of years quietly snapped. People no longer needed to understand how fire worked, because machines did the burning for them. And when the energy crises of the 1970s and 80s resurrected wood stoves, they did not return as tools of skill, but as products of marketing. Companies sold them as set-it-and-forget-it devices. They pushed airtight stoves that promised 10 or 12-hour burns without effort. They told us to close the dampers, choke the fire, and walk away. We traded efficiency for comfort. We treated fire like a thermostat. And in doing so, we forgot that a wood stove is not a furnace. It is a chemical reaction that needs our collaboration. Now contrast that with Northern Europe, Scandinavia, Russia, Austria, places where winter is not just a season, but a force that shapes architecture and culture. In these regions, people never lost the physics of burning. They evolved it. They created something profoundly different: the masonry heater. A masonry heater, often called a Russian fireplace or Finnish stove, works on the opposite principle of the American smoldering stove. Instead of a long, weak fire choked of oxygen, a masonry heater uses a short, violent burst of heat. You load a precise amount of wood, 40 to 60 pounds. You open the air fully, and you let it burn like a miniature furnace, roaring at 1,500 to 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. The burn lasts only 2 or 3 hours, but that is all it needs, because the stove itself is not thin metal. It is mass, tons of stone, brick, or masonry. This mass becomes a gigantic thermal battery. It absorbs the heat, holds it, and slowly releases it as soft, even warmth for the next 12 to 24 hours. Long after the fire has died, the house stays warm, gentle, and steady. This system is the holy grail of heating. Over 90% efficiency, virtually zero creosote, almost no pollution, and a level of comfort metal stoves cannot match. The fire burns so cleanly and so hot that every molecule of smoke is consumed. Yet the home never overheats because the stone acts as a buffer, storing the energy before releasing it back into the room. While America forgot, these cold climate cultures perfected the art. They embraced intensity, captured the heat, and let the stone do the rest. And this lost history reminds us of something profound. Fire rewards knowledge, not convenience. Only when we understand its physics can we unlock its full power. Chapter 4. The 4 Golden Rules of the Modern Woodsman. Now, at this point you might be thinking, I don't have a 3-ton Russian masonry heater. I just have a regular steel stove sitting in my living room. What am I supposed to do with all this information? The good news is, you don't need to rebuild your house, redesign your stove, or carve a stone heater out of a mountainside. You only need to change one thing: your behavior. Because the physics of fire is not locked behind ancient architecture. It is available to anyone who understands how to work with the flame instead of against it. You can stop wasting 40% of your firewood today by mastering 4 golden rules. They are simple, they are proven, and once you internalize them, your stove will never burn the same way again. The first rule is, burn hot, burn fast. Forget the dream of a single log smoldering all day. That's not efficiency, that's self-sabotage. Instead, embrace the pulse cycle. When you light a fire, open the air intakes fully. Let it roar. Push that firebox temperature past 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit as quickly as you can, because that is where secondary combustion lives. That is where the smoke ignites, where the real BTUs are unlocked. A smaller batch of wood burned intensely for 3 hours will heat your home far more effectively than a large load burned weekly for 8. The second rule is, control the fuel, not the air. This is the mistake nearly everyone makes. They fill the stove completely, then choke the air down and hope the fire behaves. But this is like slamming the gas pedal in your car and then trying to control your speed by riding the brake. It is brutal on the engine and wildly inefficient. If you want less heat, don't suffocate the fire. Simply put in less wood. Keep the air open enough to maintain a clear, bright flame. The moment you see lazy smoke drifting from the chimney, you're no longer burning, you're wasting. Fuel determines how long the fire lasts. Air determines how cleanly it burns. The third rule is, use thermal mass, the battery concept. Steel stoves lose heat quickly. The moment the flame dies, the warmth collapses with it. That's why so many people feel chained to constant smoldering. But you can add a thermal buffer. Something as simple as a pot of water on the stove can quadruple heat storage. Fire bricks placed safely around the unit can add hours of gentle warmth. And for builders or renovators, the rocket mass heater offers a modern, accessible path to masonry heater efficiency. Its sideways flame, super hot burn chamber, and cob bench create a heat battery so powerful that it uses a fraction of the fuel of a normal stove. And the fourth rule, the one you cannot negotiate with, is the 20% moisture law. No matter how brilliantly you burn, no matter how well you manage air or fuel, wet wood will sabotage everything. Green wood, at 50% moisture, hijacks nearly half of your fire's energy just to boil water. It crushes temperatures, prevents secondary combustion, and turns your chimney into a chemical swamp. A simple moisture meter, $10 at any hardware store, can save you from losing thousands of BTUs. Split your wood. Test the inside. Make sure it reads under 20%. If this rule is ignored, every other rule crumbles. These four principles, burn hot, manage fuel, add mass, and dry your wood, transform a stove from a smoke-belching guesswork machine into a precise, efficient engine of heat. Master these, and you stop fighting fire. You begin partnering with it. Chapter 5. Selecting your fuel, the strategic stockpile. Now that we understand how fire behaves, we have to talk about the substance that feeds it. Because not all wood is created equal. If you want to face a brutal winter with less labor, fewer trips to the woodpile, and more heat per log, you must understand the density of your energy source. Here's the surprising truth. A pound of dry pine and a pound of dry oak contain roughly the same BTUs. Pound for pound, they are nearly equal. In fact, pine is slightly higher because of its resin content. But the critical difference is density. A cord of oak weighs almost twice as much as a cord of pine. And that weight, those tightly packed fibers, is stored energy. Hardwoods like hickory, oak, and sugar maple function as your high-density batteries. They burn long, they burn steady, and they build a deep, powerful coal bed that anchors your fire for hours. When you want sustained heat, these are the giants you call upon. Softwoods like pine or spruce, on the other hand, are your sprinters. They burn hot and fast, throwing quick heat into the stove and rapidly raising your firebox temperature in the morning. But they vanish just as quickly. They are excellent igniters, but unreliable marathon runners. Use them to start the race, not finish it. And one rule stands above all others. Never burn trash, painted boards, pressure-treated lumber, or driftwood. These materials can release toxic fumes, corrode your stove, and in modern catalytic units, permanently damage the combustor. A wood stove is a chemical reactor. What you feed it matters. Speaking of modern stoves, if you're considering an upgrade, look for an EPA-certified hybrid or catalytic model. The technology inside these stoves is a quiet revolution. A non-catalytic stove uses engineered passages, baffles and air tubes to inject superheated air into the top of the firebox. This reignites the smoke gases we've spent the entire video talking about, converting pollution into usable heat. A catalytic stove goes one step further. It uses a ceramic honeycomb, not unlike the catalytic converter in your car, to lower the ignition point of smoke from 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit to around 500. That means cleaner burns, less creosote, and high efficiency even at lower burn rates. With these stoves, you get the best of both worlds: the high-temperature performance needed for secondary combustion and the steady, controlled output that keeps a home warm without constant tending. Choosing your fuel is not just a chore, it is strategy. It is the foundation of a winter that is easier, safer, and far more efficient. Master your wood, and you master your fire. Conclusion: the warmth of mastery. We live in an age where everything happens instantly. With a flick of a switch, darkness disappears. With a twist of a dial, a furnace growls to life. We've been trained to believe that convenience is the highest form of progress, and that anything requiring attention must be a burden. But a wood fire refuses to follow that story. It demands presence. It demands respect. When you stand before your wood stove, don't see a chore waiting to be dealt with. See a partnership, an ancient collaboration between human and flame. See a chemical engine that responds not to wishes, but to understanding. And when you shift from the lazy, smoldering habits of modern culture to the clean, bright intensity of a hot burn, you're doing far more than improving efficiency. You are saving yourself the back-breaking labor of splitting and hauling those extra cords of wood you never needed to burn. You are sparing your chimney from the slow death of creosote buildup. You are protecting the air above your home, air your family, neighbors, and children breathe. And then there is the moment of mastery, the moment every woodsman remembers. The moment you look through that glass window and see not smoke, not haze, not waste, just the shimmering distortion of heat and the white-hot glow of complete combustion. That is the fire at its purest. That is every BTU working for you. That is the flame treated not as a mystery, but as a craft. This isn't just warmth, it's skill, it's heritage. It's a reclaiming of wisdom humanity carried for 1,000,000 years and nearly forgot. So do not let your energy drift away as smoke into the sky. Burn hot, store the heat, and rediscover the ancient intelligence of the flame. For Historia Prime, thank you for spending this time with me. If you learned something new today, light up that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the forgotten skills that once shaped our world. Stay warm, stay wise, and keep the fire alive.